Hey everyone, I'm DC10 and in this video I'm going to be reviewing and showcasing the Doctor Who Experience map built for Minecraft 1.19.2. So this is a little bit different to the rest of my reviews. First of all, because this is my first time reviewing something that isn't a Minecraft mod, but also this isn't a first impressions video because I have actually seen this map before. I had a little look around it, not very in depth, but I did have a look at the entire map. So this is more of a showcase of everything it has to offer, and then I'll be giving my opinions as we go as well. So this is a map primarily built by Jacob K and Plastic Straw. You can find a link to both their channels in the description, as well as a link to download this map. I'd highly recommend checking it out. It's really, really good. So if you end up enjoying this video, then please consider subscribing, as we're on the way to 3,000 now. And with that out of the way, let's get going. By the way, before we get started, here is a full list of everyone that contributed. So you've got I Like Pandas, aka Plastic Straw, and Jacob K. And then you've also got End Phoenix, Asherath, Muffled, Wumbo Dumbo, and Tank. And of course John Pertwee. So this is the room you spawn in. There's not too much to say here. It's got a very nice design. You've got a bit of a model of the sun and the earth behind a big glass window here. We've obviously got all your credits, which I just showed you, and a few extra details dotted around the room, including an iPod and the project leaders and everything like that. And then the experience starts this way, and all you've got to do is follow the arrows. So just to let you know, they recommend a brightness of around 20 to 50% for this map. However, I'm going to be playing with brightness on maximum, brightness on bright here, just so that you guys can see everything, because obviously YouTube compression can be a little bit dodgy and it won't actually show you everything there is to offer if I leave it on a darker brightness. But yeah, just thought I'd let you know that now. Anyway, so we're now in the experience, and we'll start in chronological order with the first Doctor's TARDIS, built by Jacob K and Asherath. And here is the diorama. So obviously this is the junkyard where we first see the TARDIS, and you've got a really nice little exterior build here. One of the things you'll probably hear me repeat a lot throughout this is the use of details. The details in this thing are so good. So for example, on this exterior alone, they've gone for shulker boxes, which I think is quite an interesting decision, but actually works very nicely. And then you've got extra decorations like glow lichen and invisible item frames and stuff like that. So there's not much else to see around the junkyard, but if we head inside, as you can see, it takes you seamlessly into the first Doctor's TARDIS build. And most of this video is going to focus on the TARDIS interiors, obviously, because I build TARDIS interiors, so we're going to be taking a look at them in a lot more detail than the set dioramas. So straight away, one of the things that hit me as soon as I went into this room is the fact that this is on a diagonal. Minecraft builds are so hard to do diagonally, and they've somehow done an incredible job of it. So then dotted around the room, you've got some other decorations, such as the main console, which is a really interesting use of stained glass panes with a pressure plate on top. I think that works really well. By the way, you may have seen in my 12th Doctor's TARDIS tutorial, the most recent one, I actually used this technique where you sort of get a stained glass pane and then you use a debug stick to make all of the edges come out. I think it's a really nice technique, and this is actually where I learned it. So for roundels here, they've opted for the technique of alternating between full blocks and then glass with a light behind, which works pretty well, I think. And then you've also got this roundel wall. This is what I'm not too sure about. So this is the bit where it's like a blow-up roundels in the show. I think they are actually inflatable roundels, so it's quite hard to replicate. But I'm not sure on the look of this one. It just looks a bit weird to me. But that's just my opinion, obviously. And then you've also got these light boxes, which have a really nice design with the banners. Not too much to say about this one, so we'll head through this door, which takes us to the extra rooms in this TARDIS. So first of all, you've got a food machine here, which I really like. It's a nice little detail. You've got what I assume is a cinema. Now, I'm going to struggle a bit here with the Classic Who ones, because I have to admit, I've not watched Classic Who. I've watched about 20 episodes-ish of the first Doctor, like the first sort of 20. Then I sort of just got bored and haven't watched any of the other ones. So I do apologise, I am not going to know a lot of the references from the earlier sections of this video. So anyway, that's pretty much it for the first Doctor's TARDIS, and we'll head back through the doors and move on to the next section, which is obviously going to be the second Doctor's TARDIS, once again built by Jacob K. And yet again, the set diorama is very cool for this one. Like I said earlier, I don't know what this is from because I haven't watched the second Doctor's era, but I can at least comment on the TARDIS exterior, which is pretty nice. The one thing I will say is I think the issue with the smaller designs, where you've got 3 blocks plus a slab, is while they're much more consistent to the actual real life size of the TARDIS, it's a real shame because you can't fit quite as many details on, namely the actual sign. So obviously this bit is sort of supposed to replicate the sign, but you can't get any sort of details on it because obviously an actual sign block in Minecraft is much bigger than a slab. So that is a little bit of a shame, but I think it was the right decision to go with this smaller design for a TARDIS exterior because it fits a lot better in with the rest of the diorama. Anyway, let's head inside, and this is the second Doctor's TARDIS. So this is one of those ones which is really difficult because there's not many actual good high quality images of it online. And then the only other option, which isn't accessible to a lot of people, myself included, is to go and actually watch the episodes on something like BritBox, where you can sort of pause it and take screenshots of the TARDIS and stuff and replicate it like this. So I can't really comment on the accuracy of this build. All I'm going to say is that it's very different to the way I chose to do mine. Mine extends much further in this direction, sort of away from the door, whereas this one extends much more to the right. But yeah, you've got the classic features such as the chest and the same technique going for the console. I think it would have been nice to see a few more extra console decorations, but on the other hand, this does look a lot cleaner, so I can see why they've chosen to go for that. You've then also got a similar roundel technique right here with the glass and the full blocks, which I do quite like. And then you've got some beds here, and I assume these are supposed to be lights, but I don't know, it just looks really odd to me that there's just beds hanging in item frames off the top of these stairs. And then as we head through here, we've got another room with some extra details and decorations as well, including some raw gold, which I think is interesting because it's not a block you see a lot of in most builds. Anyway, that's pretty much it for the second Doctor. Like I said, these initial ones are relatively small compared to the New Who ones. Before we move on to the third Doctor, I also just want to comment on this incredible Bessie design. It just looks absolutely phenomenal. I mean, cars are really difficult to build in Minecraft, but they've done an absolutely phenomenal job here. And if somehow you don't know what Bessie is, I'll put a picture on screen right now, just so that you can see quite how accurate the build is. Anyway, next up we've got the third Doctor's TARDIS, built by I Like Pandas, as you can see here. Now, I have to admit, when I first saw this really freaked me out, because I thought this was an actual evoker, but it's obviously not. It's just sort of there for show, and it's the Master, as you can see. So as we head on inside the TARDIS, this is the third Doctor's one. I really like the use of ice here. I think it's a very good choice. Something which I think is a theme consistent throughout this entire map is the use of blocks that you wouldn't often think to use. Like default, when I'm thinking of a classic TARDIS, you're obviously thinking of quartz, and you're thinking of maybe bone blocks if you're doing it in my style, or you're thinking of stuff like that, but you're not thinking to use blocks like ice or mud, stuff like that, and I think that's what sets these builds apart from other maps, the very creative use of other blocks. Anyway, we've got a very similar design for the console, this time much more green, and other than that, it's pretty similar to the other ones we've seen so far. We've got a snow roof right here, and then while this one does have another door, it doesn't actually have anything past it, so that's pretty much it for the third Doctor's TARDIS. So now we're on to the fourth Doctor's build, and this is where it starts to get a lot more interesting, as obviously with the fourth Doctor, you've also got the secondary console room. So the first thing that grabbed my attention as soon as we went into this diorama is K9 right here. It's a really creative and neat little way to try and recreate a really small dog in Minecraft, and I actually think they've done a fantastic job here. This diorama is also a bit bigger than some of the others, so you've got an extra room back here with some very wacky looking signs. Anyway, let's head on inside the TARDIS, and this is the fourth Doctor's one. This one's probably the most similar to my build that we've seen so far. By the way, there is going to be a little bit of comparison between my builds and the experience map. I do apologise for that if that's not really what you're here for, but obviously I am a TARDIS builder myself, and these are both vanilla Minecraft TARDIS builds, so I'm going to be sort of looking at different elements of it in comparison to my own. But anyway, not much else to say for this room. Very similar console design, very similar door design, but back here is where it starts to get really interesting. So you've got a nice little corridor here which leads into the secondary console room, which is really nice. This console is done very well with the armor stand sort of poking out the top here. I think it looks really good. You've also then got the secondary exit here, and this is very picky, but I think it would be nice if this actually worked and led you back outside the TARDIS. And then you've obviously got the monitor. I really like how they've sort of done the curvature at the sides here. It looks very cool. And then this is obviously in a closed position, as you can see. Another detail which I've actually just noticed is the use of the bottom texture of barrels here. Another thing that I've just noticed noticed just before I was about to leave is the use of the bottom texture of barrels. Some of you guys might not even know that barrels have a bottom texture, but yeah, this is what it looks like. And I think it's actually used really, really well here for a nice little trim at the bottom. So that's pretty much it for the 4th Doctor. Down here, we've just got another little door which doesn't actually open. So we'll move on to the 5th Doctor. So this is the 5th Doctor's diorama. There's not much to see here, so we'll head on inside the TARDIS. And here we go, this is the 5th Doctor's TARDIS. This time they've gone for stripped birch logs, I believe, behind the glass for the roundels, which has a very interesting effect. I think it works a lot better than some of the other blocks like Ochre Frog Lights, because obviously it's actually got that circle texture, so I really like that. And I also like the use of quartz pillars here, the top face of quartz pillars. You've then obviously got the monitor over here, and then a little entrance leading into the corridors for this TARDIS. So this TARDIS has by far the biggest corridors out of any we've seen so far. However, most of the doors don't go anywhere, so it would be nice to see a few of them go somewhere, but the one that does is this one over here, which leads into the zero gravity room, which I think has a fantastic design. I mean, this has a really, really unique design anyway, what with all the pink, and I think they've replicated it in Minecraft perfectly. So yeah, overall, a really, really nice design. By the way, just another cool little hidden detail here, around the experience maps are sort of shortcuts, so if you press this button, you can head on through this door, and it spits you out over here. But I'm not going to do that because I want to follow it in a bit of a chronological order so that we see everything sort of how you're supposed to. So next up we've got the Rani TARDIS, which by the way I actually have a build for. There is a tutorial for it coming out soon. But yeah, this is the Rani exterior, and inside you've obviously got the Rani interior. So it's a relatively simple interior just like it is in the show. However, one detail which stood out to me was the use of these buttons. However, they're not just any buttons, they're activated. They're pushed in. So they're only 1 pixel thick, which means you can have some really nice decoration around the console for the little sort of bumps you see around the Rani's console in the show. So next up we've got the 6th Doctor's TARDIS, which is obviously going to be relatively similar to the 5th Doctor's. However, they did actually make it quite a lot different than I expected. I sort of thought that the 5th, 6th and 7th Doctors all shared almost exactly the same TARDIS, but I guess it makes sense that the set in Classic Who went through a few different iterations, probably because of budget or something like that. So yeah, they've gone for a very different design here, and I really, really like it. Back here, you've got a few more corridors. However, sadly, they don't actually lead anywhere. There are these big 2 black entrances, though, so if you download this map for yourself, I reckon you could put something really interesting behind these doorways. So we're actually already almost done with Classic Who. I am speeding through it quite quickly, but like I mentioned, that's because quite a few of the builds are relatively similar, and in New Who, which we'll get to in just a second, there's a lot more things to look at. So next up, we've got the 7th Doctor, and this one has the infamous pink Happiness Patrol exterior, which is really, really nice. However, the interior for this one is actually not what you'd expect. So in the show, obviously the 6th and 7th Doctors actually share the exact same interior. I thought the 5th, 6th and 7th Doctor shared the same one, but I guess I might be wrong on that one. Clearly there are some changes between the 5th and 6th, like I mentioned. And what the builders actually went with for this one is the TARDIS interior seen in the 7th Doctor comic books Human Nature. So this is a bit of a weird interior that I must admit never seen before at all. I actually had to ask Plastic Straw what this interior was supposed to be prior to recording this section because I was just completely confused. So this basically acts as a predecessor to the 8th Doctor's TARDIS, which is sort of a hybrid of the two. So obviously you've got a sort of roundel design type thing here, but then obviously you've got the 8th Doctor's console surrounded by the 8th Doctor's pillars. And this one for me is probably the most interesting one we've seen so far, obviously just because I didn't know what it was beforehand. It also uses mud for the floor, which aesthetically looks really good, but is just disgusting to walk around on. You just sink into the ground and it just makes a horrible squelching noise. So next up we'll move on to the 8th Doctor's TARDIS as seen in the TV movie. So this is a diorama of the area where the Doctor gets shot very close to the beginning of the movie and then is forced to regenerate. By the way, I did get that right, but then I had to ask Plastic Straw to make sure that I got it right because I didn't want to say the wrong thing, and I totally have, and I'm so proud of myself because my Classic Who knowledge is awful. But anyway, as I was saying, we'll head inside the TARDIS, And this one is just absolutely incredible. So obviously it's very, very similar to the one in the TARDIS Refined mod, which I did a review video on a few weeks ago. The reason I'm saying that is because as of recording this video, I only recorded the TARDIS Refined one less than a week ago, so that's still pretty fresh in my mind. But yeah, I absolutely adore this sky. This has to be the best bit for me. It just looks phenomenal. The use of glass panes and everything here to create a sort of galaxy effect that works really well from different perspectives, and all of the little glowing areas representing all the suns and solar systems and stuff, it just looks amazing. The library section looks really, really good. I actually thought there were books up here, although I guess I'd got that wrong. And then they've gone for a combination of green concrete and green wool for the curtain sort of sections, which I think works really, really nicely. And then you've also got the garden over here with an amazingly detailed piano. This looks absolutely fantastic. And the use of candles and everything creates some really nice ambience. Interestingly, they've put the staircase sort of inside the garden, which actually might be how it is in the TV movie. Just doing a quick Google search for some reference images, I think it's one of those things that's just not ever shown on screen, but you are briefly showed this section and it doesn't feature a staircase. So yeah, I believe they've got this right. I think it does go behind, which is actually something really interesting and something I didn't know. Other than that, you've then got the sort of red mirror room, as I like to call it, which I believe has something to do with the Master, if I've got that right. Isn't it something like the Master's executed and then the Doctor stores his ashes or his soul or something in a chest? Oh god, I don't know. I encourage you to shout at me in the comments for how wrong I've got that. Please correct my terrible Classic Who knowledge. But yeah, overall, this is probably my favourite interior so far. It could just be my favourite just for this sky, to be honest, but I absolutely love almost every single aspect of this TARDIS, and they've done a fantastic job with the scale. It doesn't feel too big or too small, and yeah, I just love everything about this one. It's really, really nice. Right, so we are now done with Classic Who, and we're ready to move on to New Who. So hopefully this is where I'll start to be able to analyze things a lot more, because I actually have the knowledge of this era of Doctor Who. So first of all, we'll start with the War Doctor's TARDIS. Obviously they've gone for the sort of no more etched into the wall here in the crumbling Gallifrey for the set diorama, which looks amazing. And then you've got the really nice ruined exterior here. They've gone for glow lichen, which I also went for. I think it's a really, really nice one. However, they've also mixed it with light grey concrete powder for some extra ruining, which I think looks really good. The only thing I'd say is that I think this blue is much too blue. Or I guess I should say much too cyan. It's not too blue. It's just sort of the wrong shade of blue. I don't really know how else to say it. But obviously if you went with a different blue, you then couldn't do the trapdoor design, and any other design wouldn't really work at this scale. So I have a feeling it might just be to do with the constraints of this sort of style of exterior. But anyway, we'll head on inside, and this is the War Doctor's interior. So this looks really, really good. The pillar design is phenomenal. They've gone for spruce, which I think works nicely because then you can integrate trapdoors as well. Now, I could be wrong, but I think they've actually made a custom model for this custom head, because obviously this is exactly accurate to the War Doctor's console monitor, and if you control middle click it actually says Plastic Straw's head, which implies that it's been equipped by Plastic Straw himself. So this could actually be custom made, which if so is absolutely phenomenal. Then you've also got some really nice decorations using birch signs and coloured text, and then you've also got all this black carpet dotted around, which I guess is supposed to represent wires, which I think it does very well. And then you've also got, interestingly, a corridor entrance back here, which as far as I'm aware isn't present in the War Doctor's TARDIS, although again it could be one of those occasions where we're never given a view of this back wall, possibly because it's where the cameras are or something, so there's not really any way of knowing. But it's an interesting choice considering there's not actually anything behind here. The only other thing really of note in this build is the door. It's an interesting one, this one, because I know for a fact that this is never seen in the show, because I really struggled when designing it, and ultimately I went for sort of a police box style door, but it's really hard to know because obviously this entire build is a hybrid of a Classic Who sort of build and then the Ninth Doctor's TARDIS. So obviously the Ninth Doctor's TARDIS has a police box, but the Classic Who ones have sort of the double doors. So here what they've chosen to go for is clearly a hybrid of the two, right? You've clearly sort of got the white look of the classic doors, but instead of them being double doors, it's much more the size of the police box ones. So I think that's a really good choice. And then over here we've got the Ninth Doctor's one. You've got a nice little chair being featured on display here as well, which is obviously the same chair we'll see inside the TARDIS. So let's go in now. So this one one, for obvious reasons, shares a lot of attributes with the War Doctor's one. However, the pillars are very different, this time opting for sandstone, and I really like the design. They're very, very big, but I think on this scale it works very well. So for the walls, you can see they've used the stair technique, although actually it's a combination of slabs and stairs, as you can see here. And I think I really like the stair technique. I think it works really nicely. However, something I'm not a fan of in this one is that some of the redstone lamps are off. I think personally they should all be on. I mean, I think there's a few occasions in the show where we see them sort of flicker, but overall I think the TARDIS looks better with them all on, but that is just a personal opinion. You've then also got the walkway over here, the extra sort of platform bit, complete with a ladder going up, which I think personally should stop here. That might just be me. I think it looks a bit weird having it continue up. The same completely accurate player head as we saw in the War Doctor one, which is really nice. Interestingly, they've gone for waxed weathered cut copper slabs, such a long name, for the console. I think this is actually perfect. I think this is a perfect colour for the console. It looks really, really good. Although they've also gone for cyan glass panes for the rotor. I think personally this would have worked better as lime, but once again this changes throughout the show. Personally I think the lime would just work better with this sort of colour of the copper. There's no corridor entrances in this one, so the only other thing to look at is the doorway, which interestingly uses mud. I'm not sure how I feel about this one. And then it also uses signs for the actual police public call box thing, which I also find interesting because obviously the exterior doesn't use this, so that's a little bit of an inconsistency. But I think on its own, this looks really, really nice. It's just when you remember that the exterior looks like that is when it gets a little bit weird and inconsistent. But I think, yeah, separately, they both look really, really good. So right here, we've got a little bit of a fork in the road, and we are going to head left to the Series 4 Turn Left set. So this is something when I first saw this map that I was really not expecting, because it just blew me away completely. So hidden back here, you have an entire massive set from the Turn Left episode. So Turn Left is a fantastic Doctor Who episode, and it's amazing to see this recreated here. You've obviously got the TARDIS right here, which actually leads into a sort of decrepit version of a hybrid between the War Doctor's TARDIS and the 9th and 10th TARDIS. So I have watched Turn Left, the episode, but it's been years and years since I watched it, and I guess this must have just not crossed my mind that you see effectively what is a version of the War Doctor's TARDIS long before you see the War Doctor's TARDIS on screen. So I think this has to be one of my favourite parts of the experience, purely because it's so unexpected. Like, you just take a little turn off of the beaten path and you end up in this massive set, far bigger than any of the ones we've seen so far. Anyway, so next up we've got the 10th Doctor's TARDIS, and I'm going to focus a bit more on the diorama because the interior is obviously the same as the 9th Doctor's one. So right here we've got loads of weeping angels attacking the TARDIS, obviously from the Blink episode, which looks really, really cool, and I particularly love the use of all of the mangrove here. I think it looks fantastic. Anyway, heading on inside, like I said, it's exactly the same as the 9th Doctor's one, which is actually something I find interesting because as far as I'm aware, the 10th Doctor's TARDIS set actually has 4 pillars in the show, whereas the 9th Doctor's one has 6. So interesting how there's still 6 pillars here. I believe these middle ones should be removed, although if I'm wrong, then please do feel free to let me know down in the comments. But yeah, I won't focus on this for too long since I've already talked about it with the 9th Doctor's section. Before the 11th Doctor's TARDIS, there's a nice little detail right here, which is the junk TARDIS. They've done a really good job of this one, particularly on the scale, because it's hard to replicate something so small while still trying to squeeze in some details. I think they've done a fantastic job here, particularly with the layered trapdoors for the console. It looks really good. But anyway, next up we've got the 11th Doctor's TARDIS, and the diorama they've gone for is from the Let's Kill Hitler episode, and I believe this is actually Hitler's office where the TARDIS sort of lands. And there's also a door over here, and it has something behind it, but I'm not going to tell you what it is. If you want to find out, you have to download the map for yourself. But anyway, let's head inside and take a look at the 11th Doctor's TARDIS. And just as an extra detail, it literally plays I Am the Doctor, the 11th Doctor's theme, using note blocks as you enter, which is just an incredible detail. I'll turn that up in case you can't hear it. It's a very cool detail, but I'm going to turn it off because it does get annoying. But yeah, so this, along with the 8th Doctor's one, is probably one of my favourites so far. They've done a fantastic job with this TARDIS interior. It looks amazing. First of all, I'd like to comment on the scale of this build. I think they've done a fantastic job with the scale, because it's really easy with this build to just go way over the top, which I feel like I did in both of my versions of the 11th Doctor's TARDIS. I scaled it back a bit when I remade the tutorial, but I still think it was a little bit too big. One of the things I'm not too fond of, like I did mention in my TARDIS Refined video, is the use of stone here. I think it doesn't really fit. I think it looks a little bit plain, and maybe there was a better block choice for that. But other than that, I've pretty much not got any complaints. The honey behind here does look weird, but upon seeing this for a second time, I think having gotten used to it a bit, I think it does work very nicely. There are also some corridors leading up through this staircase, which are a bit bigger, but ultimately they just curve back round to the top of the TARDIS, which is a very nice little detail. However, I maybe would have liked to have seen some extra rooms with this one. There's just so many corridor entrances and even some on-screen appearances of some actual rooms that could have been recreated. So yeah, that would have been nice to see, but overall, really nice build. I particularly love the banners for this, by the way. I think they look really good. So we will move on, because obviously the 11th Doctor has multiple TARDIS interiors. The other one being, of course, from Series 7B, the first version of Capaldi's TARDIS interior. And this diorama is my favourite by far of any of the dioramas. It might not look like much for now. I mean, I think this tree and everything looks incredible on its own, but it's just so cool. So you climb up this ladder for a little bit, and then you basically head through on into this staircase, which is completely surrounded by pitch black, so you don't really know what's happening, but you just ascend through this staircase, and I've fallen off. As I was saying, you ascend through this staircase onto the clouds, and you just get greeted by this amazing starry night sky, and then of course the TARDIS interior. And I think it's just such a cool way to enter the TARDIS. But anyway, speaking of entering the TARDIS, that's what we'll do, and here is the 11th Doctor's second TARDIS interior. One of the things I've got to comment on straight away is these pillars, and what a phenomenal job the builders have done with these. It is so difficult to fit in a lot of pillars into this design, and they've somehow managed to squeeze in, hold on, I want to count these, a total of 12 pillars plus these extra bits. So technically speaking, 14 pillars into this TARDIS, which is just insane. I only managed to squeeze in like 6 or 8 into my build, because it's so hard to get a design which you can replicate on loads of different angles in loads of different sections. So obviously you've got the whirly bits at the top. There's only 2 layers, not 3. There is actually 3 in the show, but it makes sense for there to only be 2 here, because otherwise it wouldn't really be consistent with the scale of this build. Another thing I'd like to talk about is these lights right here. They've gone for cyan shulker boxes with a glowing item frame, with a glass pane, with an acacia button. So many different layers, but I think it actually works really well. The only thing I would say is I think it would look better personally with a blue shulker box, because the lights are relatively dark in the actual TARDIS. And then heading underneath, you've got this section. So I don't know how I feel about the waxed weathered copper for the walls. I'm not a huge fan, although the colour is relatively accurate to what it is in the show, but I don't know, I don't think the green goes very well with the very blue cyan sort of TARDIS that we've got going on here. Now, this is the first one where I'm going to say that I really would have liked to have seen some extra rooms with this one. The other ones have sort of just been, you know, it would have been a nice extra, but this one I think there was a lot of missed potential for some really cool extra rooms, because in this TARDIS we have an episode where you basically go around the entire TARDIS. You've got the ARS room, you've got all the different corridor designs, you've got the cliff face and stuff, and it would have been nice to have seen at least some of those implemented into this design. But as it stands, we've got the 4 main corridor entrances, 2 up here, 1 there, and 1 here, but sadly they don't go anywhere. Anyway, next up we've got the 12th Doctor's TARDIS, and this set is obviously from the episode The Pilot, as it says right there. This is sort of the Doctor's study when he's working in the university, and he's got the TARDIS in the corner. This is where he meets Bill for the first time, I believe. So yeah, really nice set here. I particularly love how they've done the rug here with the coral. This is a really nice technique which I initially discovered from Good Times with Scar, where you basically have a slab which is waterlogged, and that means that you can place coral on top of it and it won't die, and it's just a really good way to sort of make a bushy woolen rug design. But heading into the TARDIS, as you can imagine, it's relatively similar similar to the 11th Doctor's second TARDIS interior, but obviously with the colour changes mainly to the orange and the sort of darker tones, and the bookshelves and everything making it a bit more homely. I think the colour scheme for the bottom of this TARDIS is much better than the 11th. I think these banners work really nicely, and I think the waxed exposed copper looks really nice here too. But yeah, other than that, you've just got a few blackboards dotted around as decoration in a banner form and then a block form as well. And that's pretty much all there is to see this change from the 11th Doctor's one, so we will move on to what is unfortunately almost the last TARDIS interior this experience has to offer. Okay, editing DT here, we're gonna have to stop for a second. So it turns out something I didn't realise while recording this video is that there's actually another TARDIS which I haven't covered yet, and that is this right here, as you can see behind me, the Trenzalore TARDIS. The reason I very nearly missed this one is because this is actually where you spawn when you first enter the experience, and then you do a cool little thing which takes you to the actual main starting area, which I'll show you in just a second. However, the reason I hadn't realised this is because I'd actually used a version of the map which I'd explored before recording this video. Months and months ago, I had a look around this experience myself. Not a proper in-depth one like we've done in this video, but just a little one. So I completely forgot that this was a thing. So there's not too much to say about this one. It's obviously just a broken version of the 11th Doctor's second TARDIS. I love the effect here with the end crystal. If you go underneath the TARDIS, you can actually see the end crystal over here. And I really love how they've done the effect with the beacon and everything as well. It looks really, really cool. Other than that, they've sort of just ruined the 11th Doctor's second TARDIS. You've got loads of moss and dirt and stuff everywhere. The hanging roots and everything from the ceiling look really, really good. It's very dark. Obviously, you're supposed to play at about 20% brightness, so if I do that now, couldn't find the brightness thing for a second, but look, you can see it's very, very dark, which is really, really cool. But yeah, that's pretty much it. But you can see a mangrove sign over here, and that says enter the Doctor's time stream, and as soon as you do that, it seamlessly teleports you to the actual start of the experience, which is right where we started this video. So I will go back to recording DT and let you get to the end of this video. So this is obviously the set from Series 12, where we sort of see Jodie Whittaker doing some maintenance on the TARDIS and stuff in a big old workshop. This set is really nice. This is one of my favourites as well. Once again, I love the use of all the mangrove and the mud and stuff down here. I think it makes an amazing floor texture. And yeah, it just looks really nice. I also think they've hit the nail on the head here with the blue for Jodie's TARDIS. I think this is the most accurate blue we've seen so far compared to some of the other ones. And then as we head on inside, this is the interior. So I've got a bit of a love-hate relationship with this one, to be perfectly honest with you, because there's some elements which I absolutely adore and then some that I don't. So let's start with the good stuff. I absolutely love their use of stripped spruce logs and oak trapdoors for these sort of round doors going around the side. I think it looks amazing. It's really, really nice with the uneven top and everything, making it look very organic. I love the entrance as well with the sort of 3 iron doors. Everything just looks fantastic. I also really like this glass technique for the blue bits. I don't know what they're called. I have absolutely no idea. But yeah, I really like the technique they've used for these with the glowing item frames and stuff. I think that looks really nice. And I do also like the console as well. I like the integration of the wood with the deep slate. They contrast really nicely and make for a very neat looking console. But now let's get on to the things that I don't really like about this one. First of all, I just don't like the red sandstone. And while we're here, I don't like the shroom lights either. I think what's annoying for me is that they're two very, very different looking blocks trying to be the same thing, but it doesn't look the same, and I think that sort of just bugs me. Now, I do understand why they've done it. It's obviously because the red sandstone has a slab variant, which means you can be a lot more creative with that. And obviously, if you get rid of the slabs, it does look a bit weird. It looks a bit thin and a bit bare. So I do get why they've done it. But I think overall, honey is just a much better choice. I stand by my choice of honey. The transparency sort of makes it feel like it's glowing a bit, and it's sort of the perfect colour. And yeah, overall, I think honey is just a better choice. I also do like that they've used monitors in this TARDIS, but interestingly, there's 3 of them I'm not really sure what's going on here, but you've got an extra one over here, as well as the two main ones. So I'm not really sure about that one. Maybe it's seen on this show at some point. Maybe I'm just being stupid. I'm not sure. But yeah, like I said, love-hate relationship with this TARDIS. I think the scale and everything's really good. I really like some elements of it, but I'm just not a fan of this main block palette that they've gone for. So our final main sort of TARDIS to have a look at is the Ruth Doctor's one, and this set diorama is obviously from when we first discover the Ruth Doctor's TARDIS buried underground by the grave. And what's really cool about this one is to get inside the TARDIS, you actually have to dig down into it, which I just think is a really nice detail. So as you head on inside, obviously you've got the Ruth Doctor's TARDIS. It's a relatively small one, pretty simple. It once again uses the full block and glass roundel technique. It also uses ice, which like I mentioned earlier, I think is a really creative block to use here. And the pillars, I think they've done a fantastic job with. The deep slate and the deep slate walls and stuff work really well, and the designs are just very, very accurate. And then you've obviously also got the two monitors. Interestingly, they've gone for the same design for both. I believe in the show it is shown that they do have a different design, so that might just be something to bear in mind. But yeah, overall, really, really nice build. Although it does freak me out that there's two different doors. Which one do I use? Anyway, so that's us done with the main TARDISes, like I said. But wait, we've got a cafe. Oh, and also we've got Davros. It's the end, but the moment has been prepared for.
It's the end. But the moment has been prepared for.
So this is actually our last TARDIS. It's also the cafe, but it's our final TARDIS, and it's the Hellbent American Diner that we see in, obviously, the episode Hellbent. This might be one of my favourite builds so far. It's just, the style here is amazing. It's so accurate to a classic, colourful American diner. There's so many different things to look at. You've got the glass going on up here. You've got all the sort of frog lights and stuff looking really cool up on the walls. All the paintings and stuff. Oh, I just think it's a really good design. But obviously not only that, but you've also got behind this very inconspicuous looking door another TARDIS to look at. Now, like with the Rani one, I have actually built the Hellbent TARDIS, and it will be coming out in a future tutorial, so look out for that. But yeah, I really like this design. I think it's very nice. Pretty simplistic once again. This time they've gone for clay as their full block for the roundels. As far as I'm aware, there's nothing behind this door. Nope. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this TARDIS. And with that, that's also pretty much us done for the entire Doctor Who experience. The other thing to look at is these Cybermen doing some questionable dances. I'm going to move on. Although I do have to show you this really quickly. You've got an automatic opening door, which just looks amazing. So as you walk up to it, look at that. That's such a cool little animation. It just looks really, really cool. But yeah, this spits you out right here in the main room. And I've just realised, I've just looked at this. It's the room from Series 1, Episode 2, The End of the World. Of course, that's why the sun's there and it's so big and about to engulf Earth. Oh, that makes so much sense. I've only just realised that. Oh, that's stupid. But anyway, with that, we are done with this map. I really, really hope you've enjoyed this review. It's turned out quite a lot longer than I was expecting it to, but I really did want to go as in-depth as I could with all of these builds. But there's so many builds to get through that I still didn't go as in-depth as I wanted to with some of them. I've had to cut some bits out, no doubt, in the edit. But yeah, I really hope you've enjoyed this video nonetheless. So like I said at the beginning of the video, the link to download this map is in the description. It is for 1.19.2. However, as far as I'm aware, I believe it does also work on the latest version, which at time of recording is 1.20.1. And if you do end up having a look around this experience map and maybe even adding some more builds of your own, then please let me know by sharing some screenshots in my Discord server. There is a link to that in the description as well. We've got a really nice little community over there, and the Discord server is also where you get all of your updates for the DT10 SMP. So anyway, if you enjoyed this video, then please leave a like or comment, and if you'd like to see more content like this, then please subscribe. But I've been DT10, and I will see you in the next video.